Hello and welcome everybody. Today we're checking out the skill system of Generation 0. First of all, if you just came here for a build, here's the one I recommend. It's the one I use all the time, it's a good build, you'll be fine. If you want to tailor it to yourself, I highly recommend these 4 skills here, and arguably this 5th one here. Most of the other ones are quite optional, but these 4 here will keep you alive, and this one here is one of the biggest buffs in terms of DPS that you can get from the skill system. So I highly recommend getting these 4 ones here, this one here, and then you can get whatever you want. With just those 5 ones you'll be able to finish the game just fine. Now, let's take a more in-depth look at this system. First of all, you get XP from a number of smaller things, but the main source of XP you'll have is from destroying machines. Get enough XP and you'll level up. Leveling up gives you a skill point. Now, while the maximum level of your character is somewhere in the thousands, you'll only have access to a maximum of 31 skill points. Once you invest a point or more, you can only get them back by resetting your entire build, which requires a bit of uranium. Don't worry though, you'll get uranium from base assault, base defense, leveling up after you get your skill points, so getting some will not be that big of a problem. One thing that must be said about the skill system is that it's very weak. In terms of damage, you have a lot of skills that are mutually exclusive. Like this one here, single shot fire with automatic weapons does more damage to components, while this one here increases the amount of damage dealt when using automatic fire. So only one of these two will be applied at any given time. This one increases the amount of damage done to enemy armor, this one to components, so again only 10% at a time. And the most you can have is 10% from this one here, then you can have another 10% from this one here, then you can have another 10% from this one here, and another 15% from this one here. However, while that does add up to 45% damage, which is something, this one only works the first time you deal damage to an unaware opponent, so it basically only works on the first shot of a fight. This one only works on spotted enemies and you have to spot them every 30 seconds, so this gets annoying really fast. So realistically you're only gonna have like 20% damage increase at any given time, which is not a whole lot. This is partly why I said in the beginning that you don't have to worry about your builds all that much. Most of these skills are not that strong. Now let's take a look at specializations for a second. At the end of every line there is a specialization. You can have multiple unlocked, but you can only have one active at any given time. Back in the day there used to be somewhat of a point in having multiple ones unlocked, but now we can actually respect the skill points. So if you want to change your specialization now, you might as well just respect the whole thing. For specialization, marksman, my favorite, it removes weapon sway. This is firstly something that I enjoy. I hate weapon sway, but it's also very good because it makes it easier to hit enemies in their weak spots, which in turn means you deal more damage. Especially with precision weapons such as the PVG, which just so happens to be one of the best, if not the best weapons in the game. So I highly recommend the marksman specialization. Second, Vanguard, you receive 25% less damage. This one is somewhat decent. However, even with this one and armor, which adds another 10% more damage resistance, it will not be enough to keep you alive by themselves. You will likely still need the 3 movement speed skills, and while you're here you might as well pick up health. And if you have these 4 skills already, you're generally fine without Vanguard, you're not gonna die that much. And if you do die a lot with these 4 skills active, you're probably gonna still die even with Vanguard. So I don't see a lot of a reason to basically waste points here. To get to Vanguard you have to first get this skill, which is useful, then you have to essentially waste a point here, because this skill is not particularly useful. Then invest in another 2 or 3 points here, waste another one here, because damage against armor is not particularly great, you should aim for components. Then get this skill, which is quite useful, but that's another 2 points. and then get Vanguard, which means you have a specialization taken. Now, if you think that this much investment is worth it, you do you, but personally I don't think there's enough of a point science nowadays. You can just craft adrenaline to pick yourself up, so that's not a big problem. And even if you don't have adrenaline, you likely have field radios, which you can use to fast travel to where the fight is if you do die. So overall I personally think that it's a waste of both points and specialization. Next up is Commander. This just makes field radios have more charges. This is not particularly useful. Field radios are a fairly early craft, not hard to get, and even if they were hard to get, you would want more of them, not for them to have more charges. Because you have to place one down before you die, so usually before the fight even starts, so a lot of the time you'll end up not using it even once. So overall, lame skill and not at all easy to get, unless you want to pick up designated target as well, but I already advised against that. So you need quite a few skill points to get to it, and what you get is not that much. If this skill dropped a field radio when you die, maybe even a single use one, maybe even only if you have one in your inventory, it would be worth it. As it is, hard skip, although I kinda get why they don't do it like that, because it would then be very similar to survival, which we'll get to in a moment. Next up is Medic. When you use adrenaline to pick up a player or yourself, you also get to max health, as opposed to like 20, which is the basic. Not really great. Usually after you die there is a window to heal, because most machines don't really spam attacks, they have a cooldown in between, so this is not particularly great. Survival is a bit more useful. You basically get one free adrenaline per fight. However, a lot of the time this skill is actually bugged and it resets before you leave the fight, so you essentially have infinite adrenaline. If such a bug is in the game when you play, then it's quite a decent skill. You basically can't die. Otherwise, it's not bad, but it's not really amazing. Not that any of them are all that amazing. Next up is Commando. You deal a tad more damage on the first shot of a fight. Moving on, next up is Hacker. It works in tandem with remote hack. Hacked enemies will attack each other. Now, what this goddamn screen does not tell you is that this has a chance of working, which goes down with enemy level. So when it comes to something like a Phoenix tank, you'll have only a 10% chance of successfully hacking the tank, as opposed to something like a prototype tank, which has a 20% chance. Guess what the chance is against the Reaper? It also has a 60-second cooldown. So every 60 seconds you get a low chance of disorienting a machine, and if then you also have the specialization equipped, the machines will hit each other. Low chance, long cooldown, what's not to like? Well, there's more. While the machine do deal good damage against you, they do not deal all that much damage against each other. So while it might be cool to look at the enemies fighting each other, it's not particularly effective. Oh, by the way, you can also hack the doors in base assault missions, but it's not like that matters. So yeah, hard pass from me. And last, Engineer. You know those small little robots that sometimes other robots send after you? Well, with this active, you can loot them from destroyed enemies, if they still have that tick pod on the back, that is. You can also keep them and put them in your storage box to give to other characters. You don't need the specialization to use them, just to get them, which is cool. What isn't cool is how little damage these things deal. So personally, I wouldn't bother. Not only with the specialization, if I had them already, I still wouldn't use them. So yeah, Survival and Vanguard are worth considering, with Marksman being my recommendation. The rest can be ignored. Other than that, let's talk about some noteworthy skills. Chemist, lockpicking and salvage are quite useful for new players. Personally, I moved away from using them. I get more ammo than I need already as it is. But early, when you have bad weapons, salvage, lockpicking, that will get you the ammo that you need, and Chemist will help you out a bit before you learn to play the game properly and avoid those gas clouds. Component damage gives component damage. You also get spotting intel along the way, which is a nice to have skill, so generally I do recommend picking this up. Carrying capacity is something a lot of players really enjoy. I somewhat got used to playing without it, and it's less important nowadays than it used to be, as you might see in some other videos, because crafting mats now weigh less, so you overall have to carry less weight with you. But a lot of players do enjoy it, so do consider it. You can also then get steady feet, which means that you don't trip as often, which again a lot of new players might find quite useful. Another skill worth looking into is heal amount. It gives your healing items more healing amount. This is quite a nice quality of life if you can afford the skill point. You use less medkits, you need to carry less medkits, and it also means that you can heal faster and get back into the fight faster. So it is something that you should consider. I did use it for a while back when I was low on meds, so if you are like that, do consider it. Designated target, it's not a bad skill. It has no cooldown, no limit number of targets, you can see marked targets through walls, it has no range limit. It's overall quite decent, but you have to get out your binoculars every 30 seconds, mark all the targets that you're gonna be shooting, go back to your weapons, and you only get 10% more damage, which is quite insignificant. And that's about it. That's basically all of the skills that you should care about, which I honestly think is quite the shame. Most of these are insignificant or outright useless. So as long as you have the sprint skills, you'll probably be just fine. I heard some people say that they wish we could unlock all of the skills at the same time, and while I do understand where that's coming from, because it's not like it's gonna do that much of a difference, we're not gonna become OP or anything, and it would be a nice thing to work towards, I don't think that's a fix for the issue here, because the issue here is that a lot of these skills are kinda useless. Leaving the skill point cap can be useful if a lot more skills are a lot more useful, because that encourages build diversity. You can have different play styles, you can actually have a hacker build where you do hacking things, and that's something I'm far more interested in, build diversity. But whichever way they decide to go about it, I really hope they do fix it, because this is just lame.